Welcome to the debate. Today we are putting a century-old adage on trial. We've all heard it since we were kids, right? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. For decades, that was just the golden rule of nutrition. Skipping it was a metabolic sin.
And now the script is completely flipped. I mean, if you're not waiting until noon to eat, you're supposedly missing out on all these longevity benefits and mental clarity. Breakfast went from being the king of meals to being dismissed as just a marketing ploy.
Exactly. So you have this clash between the traditional view that the body needs morning fuel to get its engine started and this modern idea of time-restricted eating. And I think the question we really need to answer is skipping breakfast a dangerous habit that wrecks your hormones, or is it actually a pretty smart hack for weight control?
And it's not a simple yes or no, is it? It really depends on who you are. Are you trying to lose a few pounds, or are you trying to, say, run a marathon?
Well, I'll take the side of biology here. I'm going to argue that for most people, and especially for anyone with a vulnerable physiology, breakfast isn't optional. It's the primary signal for our circadian rhythm. When you skip it, you're basically inviting cortisol dysfunction and metabolic confusion.
Okay, and I'll take the side of the data, specifically the randomized controlled trial data, not just observation. I'll argue that the so-called dangers of skipping breakfast are frankly vastly overstated. For a healthy adult, it can be a totally neutral, even effective tool for cutting calories. It's not a health hazard, it's just a schedule change.
Okay, so let's get into the physiology then. My whole stance is really rooted in our circadian rhythm, our internal clock. We're diurnal creatures. We're meant to eat during the light and fast during the dark. So when you wake up, your body it's chemically demanding a start signal.
A signal for what, specifically?
For the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. I mean, think of it as your body's command center for stress and energy. There's a study, Whitbrock and colleagues, that looked at women who regularly skipped breakfast. And the findings were, they were concerning. These women didn't just have different eating habits. They had a fundamentally disrupted stress response.
You're talking about the cortisol findings, right?
I am. The skippers showed a blunted diurnal cortisol amplitude. Now, to unpack that jargon, in a healthy person, cortisol should spike in the morning. That's what wakes you up, gets you moving. Then it should drop off. These skippers, though, had a flatter curve. Their cortisol just sort of stayed chronically elevated. They also had higher blood pressure. It suggests the body is reading no food as a low-grade chronic stressor.
Okay, but I want to push back on that interpretation of stress. We always paint cortisol as the bad guy, the fat storage hormone. But like you said, it's also the get-up-and-go hormone. Yes, that study showed elevated blood pressure. That's a valid point. But did it actually show a collapse in major health outcomes?
It showed the physiological precursors to it.
But it didn't show a difference in body weight or total cholesterol. And this is where I think the whole breakfast is essential camp gets into trouble. You tend to rely on observational data. You look at people who happen to skip breakfast and see that they're often unhealthier.
Because the correlation is just overwhelming. I mean, look at kids and teenagers. A huge systematic review in Nutrients analyzed over 280,000 children, and they found that skipping breakfast was associated with being overweight or obese in 94.7% of them. That's nearly universal.
It's a striking number, I grant you, but we have to be so careful with the chicken and egg problem here. It's the classic causality trap. Are these kids overweight because they skip breakfast? Or are they skipping breakfast because they're already overweight and maybe trying to diet in their own way?
You think 94% of cases are just reverse causality? That seems like a stretch.
I think a huge portion are. What's the first thing a teenager does when they feel self-conscious about their weight? They skip a meal. It's the easiest cut. But if you look at randomized controlled trials, the gold standard, where we actually tell people what to do, the story changes completely.
You're bringing up the Durandar study.
Exactly. Published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, they took adults trying to lose weight, and they told one group to eat breakfast and the other to skip it. After 16 weeks, you know what the difference in weight loss was?
It was statistically insignificant.
It was zero. No difference at all. The recommendation to eat or skip had absolutely no effect on weight loss. So that right there pretty much debunks the idea that skipping breakfast wrecks your metabolism and stops you from losing fat. It's just math.
It is math, but I think you're missing a variable in your equation. You're looking at calories in. What about calories out? And I'm not talking about going to the gym. I mean NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
The subconscious movement, right? Fidgeting, walking around.
Exactly. And there's some compelling evidence that when people skip breakfast, their body senses a fuel deficit and it goes into a subtle energy conservation mode. They don't feel starved, but they stop fidgeting, they take the elevator. So while they might eat 300 calories less, they might also burn 300 calories less just by being more sedentary.
So it's a wash.
It's a metabolic wash. Yes, you aren't losing weight faster, but you are moving less and arguably feeling more tired. You're surviving, sure, but you're not really thriving.
Well, lethargic is subjective. I know plenty of people who do intermittent fasting and feel razor sharp in the morning. But I will concede the NET point. The body is smart. But other studies do show that skippers cut their daily intake by about 250 to 400 calories, and they don't fully compensate at lunch.
The ravenous monster theory, that if you skip breakfast, you'll just binge later.
Right, and the data shows that's not quite true. People eat a bit more, but not enough to erase the deficit. So if your only goal is to cut calories easily without counting everything, skipping breakfast is a valid set-it-and-forget-it strategy.
Simplicity is fine, but not if it costs you your metabolic flexibility. And this is where I need to draw a really hard line. We cannot talk about skipping breakfast without talking about insulin. For anyone with blood sugar issues, skipping breakfast it's downright hazardous.
The diabetes care study, yeah?
Yes, this is crucial. They took people with type 2 diabetes and had them skip breakfast. After lunch, their glucose spiked to 14.9 millimole per liter. When they'd had breakfast, it was only 10.7.
Wow, that is a massive spike. That's the difference between a controlled day and a dangerous one.
And the mechanism is called the second meal phenomenon. Basically, breakfast primes the pancreas. It wakes up the little beta cells that make insulin. If you skip it, those cells are caught napping when lunch hits. They're slow to respond, and your blood sugar just skyrockets.
I have to agree with you there, 100%. For a type 2 diabetic or even pre-diabetic, that beta cell memory issue is a complete deal breaker. You need that morning primer. But, and this is a big but, does this apply to a metabolically healthy 30-year-old?
The mechanism exists in everyone. It's just a question of whether your system can handle that stress without breaking.
But healthy bodies adapt. I mean, we see people who practice time-restricted eating and their insulin sensitivity actually improves over time. Why? Because they lose visceral fat. If skipping breakfast helps you lose 20 pounds of belly fat, that long-term benefit probably outweighs the short-term blip.
If they lose the fat. And is it because of the fasting or just the weight loss?
Probably the weight loss. But my point is, skipping breakfast isn't a guaranteed path to diabetes for healthy people. It's a stressor. Yes, but exercise is a stressor. The body adapts to acute stress by getting stronger.
Okay, well, let's talk about a stressor that's harder to adapt to. Digestion, the actual mechanics of the gut. Your stomach produces acid on a schedule. It anticipates a meal.
Pavlovian conditioning for your stomach.
Precisely. So if you habitually skip breakfast, you get this pool of acid just sitting there in an empty stomach. And that can be a driver for gastritis, acid reflux, bloating. The acid has nothing to work on, so it just irritates the stomach lining.
That makes sense, and for people prone to reflux, I'm sure it's true. But anecdotally, I've also heard the opposite. People feel less bloated when they give their digestive system a longer break.
Perhaps, but then you disrupt the gastrocolic reflex. Eating in the morning is what triggers peristalsis. It clears out the bowels. Skipping that can lead to constipation. You're messing with the body's natural rhythm.
I'll grant you, routine is definitely the gut's best friend. Let's pivot to something that affects everyone, though. Brain function.
Yes, this is my strongest argument for the general population. Our brain is an energy hog. After an overnight fast, your liver glycogen, your glucose stores, are low.
And the brain runs on glucose.
Primarily, yes. If you don't refuel, you're asking your brain to run on fumes. Research is pretty clear on this. Skipping breakfast can lead to brain fog, slower reaction times, trouble focusing.
Is that a physiological inability, though, or is it just psychological? Like, I feel hungry, so now I'm distracted by the thought of food.
Are developing, their metabolic rate is higher. The data is consistent. Kids who eat breakfast do better on tests.
For kids, I am in 100% agreement. A child's glycogen stores are tiny. Sending a kid to school on an empty stomach is setting them up to fail. But for adults, our bodies can make their own glucose. Unless you're doing, high-intensity calculus first thing in the morning, most adults adapt. The brain fog is often just sugar withdrawal.
Adapting to low fuel isn't the same as optimal performance. And speaking of performance, let's talk about exercise. A 2025 narrative review made a really sharp distinction here.
Oh, I found this review fascinating. It added so much nuance.
It did. It showed that for endurance athletes, running, cycling, anything over 60 minutes, skipping breakfast is a performance killer. You run out of glycogen. You hit the wall.
Right. For endurance, absolutely. But this is the interesting part. It found something totally different for resistance training. If you're lifting weights, especially in the afternoon, it had minimal impact on your strength, whether you ate breakfast or not.
The fuel mechanism is different, sure. But even then, if you train in the morning while fasted, your total volume usually drops. You just quit earlier.
But here's the kicker from that review. The placebo effect. In some studies, when they gave the breakfast skippers a drink with 0 calories, but they thought it had fuel, their performance drop completely disappeared.
That's incredible. So the brain it shut the body down because it thought it was running on empty.
Exactly. It supports the central governor theory. The brain throttles your muscles to protect you. So for exercise under an hour, that need for breakfast might be partly psychological. Partly is the key word. You can't placebo your way out of a micronutrient deficiency. And that's the final piece, isn't it? It's not just about energy. A study on pregnancy highlighted this perfectly.
The sheer volume of nutrients they need.
Yes, a pregnant woman needs so much more iron, calcium, B12. It's mathematically difficult to cram all of that into just 2 meals. You skip breakfast, you remove a third of your opportunity to get those nutrients in.
That is an undeniable logistics problem.
If you skip a meal, your other meals have to be incredibly nutrient-dense. And let's be honest, most people aren't breaking their fast with liver and kale. They're having a sandwich.
Exactly. The review on kids showed that skippers just had lower quality diets overall. Less fruit, less fiber.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. It seems like the yes or no debate is the wrong way to frame it. It's more of a who and when debate.
I completely agree. We need to stop treating breakfast like a moral imperative or a crime and start seeing it as a physiological tool.
Okay, so let's try to categorize it for the listener. Who is actually suitable for skipping breakfast? I can start. Skipping is probably suitable for healthy adults who want to simplify things and control calories without counting. If you don't have acid reflux, you're not a diabetic, and you're not trying to set a PR on a morning 10K, it's a valid strategy.
I can accept that. But the not suitable list is where the real risk is. Number 1, as we said, type 2 diabetics. The glucose spike risk is just too high.
Agreed. That's non-negotiable.
Number 2, children and adolescent. The link to obesity and cognitive issues is too strong. They need fuel to grow and learn. Period.
And I'd add pregnant and breastfeeding women to that list. The nutrient demand is just too high.
And finally, high-output endurance athletes. If you're training hard for over an hour, you need the glycogen. Trying to power through on stress hormones is just a recipe for burnout.
So it really comes down to your goal. Are you just trying to get through a sedentary workday and maybe lose a few pounds? Skipping might be fine. Are you trying to grow a human, learn an algebra, or run a half marathon? You should probably eat breakfast.
Precisely. And I just want to leave with one last thought. That cortisol study, it highlighted that skipping creates a stress-independent overactivity.
Meaning your body is stressed even if you don't feel stressed.
Right. So if your life is already high stress, bad sleep, crazy job, skipping breakfast is just throwing another log on that fire. You might be adapting, but you're taxing a system that's already overloaded.
That's a great point. Fasting is a stressor, and sometimes we need less stress, not more. Listen to your body. If you wake up and the thought of food makes you nauseous, that's a signal too.
Usually a signal that you ate too late the night before.
Touché. It's all connected.
So I think we've dismantled the dogma. There's no one right way. But for most people, I still maintain that starting your day with some good protein and fiber is the safest bet for long-term health.
And I maintain that if you are not hungry, forcing down toast because of an old slogan is unnecessary. Test it. If you skip breakfast and you feel great, keep going. If you skip and you feel anxious and miserable, for heaven's sake, eat the eggs. A fair compromise. Thank you for listening to the debate. We hope this helps you navigate your own morning routine with a bit more science and maybe a little less guilt.
Until next time.